Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting ready to get started. Give you a second to find your seats. All right, good morning again to you. I'm Ron Drell Moore, and welcome to the first legislative Cracker Barrel session for this session. We're so glad that you could be here today. We're going to ask that you would at this time stand so we can say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much, and you may be seated. All right, well, we're glad to have today with us two legislators, and we will have three, we believe. I believe one is on the way, but we're so grateful to have, those of you who know the drill. State Senator John Ford representing the 38th District, and Representative Tanya Paff representing the 43rd District, and Representative Bruce Borders representing the 45th District is, we believe, on his way. Alan Morrison is not here, and Representative Bob Heaton, representing the 46th District, is not attending today. He does send his regrets. He has a family commitment, and he will attend the next sessions. All right, so we're going to just jump right into some things and get things started by introducing our legislators who are here. And when Representative Borders gets here, we'll give him a space to speak as well. But we're going to ask that each of our legislators take 2 minutes just to introduce themselves. And the session has just started, so not a lot of things have gotten off the ground, but maybe some goals or thoughts that they have as they go into this legislative session. So let's go ahead and do the traditional ladies first. Representative Paff, if we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Tanya Paff, and I represent Terre Haute, West Terre Haute, Sealyville. So that's kind of my district. This is my 5th session, so I'm still a newbie, but John says I can't say that anymore. So ask me whatever you wish. So my goal for this session, I am on elections, education, and Ways and Means. Ways and Means is the budget, of course. And so my biggest goal for this session is to stay away from hot social political issues and just focus on the budget. I think the residents of Indiana deserve a good budget and some boost in quality of life kind of things instead of just paying down debt. So this week I spent a lot of time listening to the education, like colleges. The 7 presidents came and talked. Higher education came. So we're really just beginning. So I'm such a teacher. I'm gonna warn you now, you can ask me whatever you want, but I will probably say I don't know. We filed our bills on Thursday, and there is a bill list on the website for the Senate and the House, but I don't think any of us have had time to even look at it. We've all been scattering around trying to find co-authors and all the stuff that has to happen. So thank you for coming this morning, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, thank you. Senator Ford.
Well, good morning. John Ford, represents Senate District 38. This session I am on Senate Appropriations, where I focus on higher education, child and family services, elections, and public policy. As Tanya said, we're really just getting started, so lots of bills are just dropping, and hopefully by Tuesday they'll all be up on the website so we can look into them. For me this session, I'll be focusing on higher education funding. In terms of legislation I've filed, a couple bills that I've been trying to get done for the past few years. One on TANF. This will be my 5th session trying to update TANF. And just briefly, TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, we've not updated the cash payments or anything really in TANF since 1988. So cash payment based in 1988, imagine what that's not worth today. So trying to update that again, direct representation for children in foster care. It's my belief children in foster care are having their rights violated by not having attorneys in certain circumstances. So continuing to work on that. Also foster care support tax credit. We need to extend that as a sunset on it, so we need to update the law to allow it to continue. And then on your tax refunds, I want to allow you to donate money for cancer research to our two Tier 1 research facilities at IU and Purdue. So those are a few things that I'm covering. And one thing that kind of a fun thing for me is the poet laureate language. Indiana has a poet laureate. They're appointed for 2 years or selected for 2 years. And I'm working with the Indiana Arts Commission to try to update that statute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I see Representative Borders has entered the building. As he makes his way, we want to recognize our sponsors. And without them, this would not be possible. Of course, the Vigo County Public Library, the League of Women Voters of Vigo County Teachers Association, Vigo County Taxpayers Association, Greater Terre Haute Branch of the NAACP, and the Southern Indiana Area Labor Federation. Could we give them a round of applause for their sponsorship? And all right, Representative Borders, glad to see you today. Wondered if you could just take a couple minutes to introduce yourself and talk about some of the things you have goals for this session.
Sure. Sorry about being late there. Was wearing my insurance agent's hat this morning, and one of our employees that was filling in this morning, bottom line was he was late, and I had a client in there that needed help with their auto insurance, so that's it is what it is. But it's good to be back here. It's nice to, I think a lot of us, quite frankly, are kind of glad to put 2022 behind us. It was just a tough year for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And then, you know, and I suppose be a bit remiss if I didn't mention, you know, the shocking death of Lisa Marie Presley. I mean, of course, a huge Elvis fan, and was really surprised at that. And know a lot of the people. I actually got to meet a lot of the Presley family members or the musicians that worked with Elvis over the years, so I was just a bit shocked to see that at age, I think, 54, I believe. But anyhow, it's going to be an interesting year in that the biggest concern that I have, both whether it be Republicans or Democrats, quite frankly, when I look at so many of the bills that are introduced, and of course, you know, typically most of them wanting more spending and additional spending at at somebody else's expense, I've always said, and I'll continue saying it until it changes, that I feel like everybody at the State House has a lobbyist except for the taxpayer. And that's one of the things that I want to watch for, both in the budget and in other bills as well, just to make sure that, you know, all of these good intentions, I mean, and quite frankly, there are many good intentions behind the bills, but the bottom line is that somebody's got to pay for it. In fact, the great economist Walter Williams commented, he said the fairest definition he's ever seen of taxation is you keep what you earn and I'll keep what I earn. And so we go from there.
Thank you, Representative Borders. All right, at this time, we're going to open up the floor to our sponsors to ask their questions to our legislators. And just want to remind, even in disagreement, respectful communication and behavior is required. Yelling, using profanity, and speaking abusively, certainly not allowed. We all know that. We're going to give anyone who's asking a question, give them a minute to ask his or her question, and then we're going to give the legislator a minute and a half to respond, but not each legislator is required to answer each question, just for timeliness sake. All right, so again, we're going to ask for our sponsors. If you have a question, just go ahead and
I am
come
feeling
to
a little awkward. I mean, I changed deodorants. Is that what the problem? Is that what's going on
yes,
here? What?
From what I understand, yes, this is intentional to happenstances, from what I understand. All right, sponsors, if you want to come forward.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking, well, I'm going to have to check the deodorant thing and see what's going on here.
And if you could, whenever, and this is for both sponsors and for members of the public, whenever you come forward, please mention your name and where you're from, or if you're a sponsor, which organization you are from.
Good morning and Happy New Year's. I'm Sylvester Edwards, President of the Greater Terre Haute NAACP. I'm glad to be here this morning and for our representative. All the love and success this year. Last year was trying, but we hopefully that we're going to be more successful this year. Our question from the NAACP pertaining to voting. And we are one of the lowest voting turnouts in the nation as far as per state, and also Vigo County is one of the lowest in the county itself, in the state of Indiana. What our question is that the problem of lower voter participation in Indiana, recent election has shown that Indiana voters support mail-in ballot for all eligible voters. Would you consider a bill for improving voter participation that is supported by more of your constituents?
Thank you.
I've always been open to improving the vote by mail process and doing what we can to get more voters out. I think one of the struggles we have here in Indiana, and I think Vigo County is probably a good example, we don't do a good job of cleaning our rolls. So in Vigo County, it's estimated we have 20,000 people on our rolls that don't live here, have passed away for whatever reason, because it really has been a struggle for Indiana to do that in a legal way that doesn't violate people's rights. So I think sometimes that number is a little misleading because it does include people that are no longer here or have passed away. But I am a supporter of vote by mail and trying to increase some of those.
I am too. So I noticed during the pandemic, so that was May 2020, when we allowed no excuse absentee voting. And because of that, participation raised and we got better, and so absolutely full support.
Actually, I am not in favor of expanding the voting by mail. I'll just be frank with you. It's it's so easy to vote now with all of the early voting, and I think somewhere, from what I understood, about 40 or 50% of the people voted early this year. It doesn't. It's not really hard to vote. We make it sound as if you've got to crawl over broken glass to vote, and that's just not the case at all. And I think that increasing the voting by mail does very potentially increase voter fraud, and I just don't think it's that difficult to go vote. We've never had more opportunities and more places to be able to vote, just like in Jasonville, for example. You instead of going to all these different precincts and so forth as you used to have to do, you just go to the firehouse, you get right in. It was very easy to vote, and I think that it's one of those issues that's it's skim milk masquerading as whole milk. I just don't think that it's nearly the problem that it's being portrayed as, quite frankly.
All right, thank you very much.
I can see with your smile, we're going to get along fine again this year. We have our battles, but that's okay. But you know me well enough to know I don't pull punches on stuff.
And we'll remind that we'll have interactions as best we can.
Sorry, I'll behave.
After the official segment. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay, my name's Carolyn Calicott. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Vigo County. In fact, I have two questions, but I will ask this one first and go back to the end of the line. Okay, I'm going to pick up where Mr. Edwards left off. This is in regards to Senate Bill 370, authored by you, Mr. Ford, in regards to electronic voting systems. Provides that after June 30th, 2023, a county may not purchase new electronic voting systems except for certain purposes. Provide that after December 31st, 2027, an electronic voting system may not be used in Indiana except for the purpose of enabling voters with disabilities to vote. Provides for the January 1st, 2028 expiration of certain statutes relating to electronic voting systems. Direct the interim study committee on elections to prepare legislations to make any amendments to the Indiana Code the committee considers necessary to assist in the implementation of the phase out of electronic voting machines. Why is this coming up now, the pros and cons, and who will be on the select committee to study this?
Yeah, so the idea, behind this bill is that, we're going to have to, after the '24 election, as a state, update what equipment we use for elections. So I want to form a committee that's going to review what is the best equipment to use. And maybe that's paper, maybe it's not, but it's, to review that whole process and to create a process to do that by. We just know after 2024, we have to do it. So I want to create a committee to do that. I'm still working on, what the committee makeup would look like, but it will be House members, Senate members, some folks from other stakeholder groups out there. And the reason we limit the county, now the counties will be able to, is we don't want a bunch of counties to go out and buy equipment in '24, whole new system, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then in '26, '27, we go a different way and that equipment can no longer be used. So it's trying to set up a process, but it's also setting up a process where I am trying to get more of the cost for elections put on the state than the counties. So again, that's also part of that bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Bill Trish. I'm president of the Southern Indiana Area Labor Federation. I'd like to take this time to thank you for all coming to the Crackerbarrel sessions. This is a good program that we've had for many years, so thank you for being here today. My question to you is, do you have any bills that you are really looking at or maybe in the process of putting forth in this session?
Yeah, I think I'm at 11 bills. The one thing that I continue to work on is the foster care system, and I think it's very, very important that we try to find a way to get attorneys for some of these kids in the process. Right now in Indiana, it's optional, it's up to the judge, but just this week, there was an appellate court ruling that we violated a 12-year-old girl's rights by putting her in a correctional facility for 18 months. She never had an attorney, was prosecuted, and never knew any of her rights. So we violated her state constitutional rights and her federal constitutional rights. So that's a passion of mine that I'll be working on this session.
I've filed 5, and the one that I'm most passionate about is Project Lifesaver. I did it last year, and they said wait till the budget year. So basically, if you have a kid with autism or a parent with dementia, you would get a band on your arm, and then there's a transmitter in the county at the sheriff's office. So if this came to me from a constituent, her 9-year-old went wandering and wandered out of Vigo County, and so she reported it, and because Indiana's not geocached all throughout the state, they couldn't find him because he crossed county lines. So my bill, it's called Project Lifesaver, is to fund all of Indiana for this particular system so that every county at the sheriff's department has the capability to help find kids and adults.
One of the bills that I've actually worked on in the past and would like to see progress this year, basically it would be a study on autism potentially as it relates to vaccinations. And I know there are those that are like, oh, for heaven's sakes, here he goes again. But quite frankly, I know from a very personal experience, a grandson of mine who was ahead of all of his markers. His father's a doctor. My daughter, his mother is an RN, and in fact, she was the, I believe, the #1 student in her RN class at Ivy Tech over here at Terre Haute, their first year of their RN graduating class. And after he had his vaccines, he ended up being hospitalized, and he became very ill. And then we noticed that what happened is he's at that point ended up on the autism spectrum, and so instead of being ahead of his markers, he actually was well behind, and now he I mean, it's just it's hard for me to talk about it because I'm involving his life as well. But he'll be 13 in February. He can't read. He can't write. You know, we worry. You know, will he ever be able to marry? Will he ever be able to drive? And everything started at the vaccine point. I mean, that is exactly where it started, and if you do some research on that, you'll find that, especially with little boys, but some also with little girls, that autism sometimes follows after vaccinations, and so I would like a study done on that. So.
I'd like to take
I
the
mean,
time to thank.
don't laugh at me, ma'am. That's my
Okay.
grandson I'm talking
All right,
about.
all right.
I'm sorry, but I don't appreciate somebody laughing at me sharing a story about my grandson. I do not appreciate that.
All right, and we will just reemphasize the part where it says, even in disagreement, respectful communication and behavior is required from everybody here. So we'll just move on from that. Go ahead.
I'd like to thank the sponsors for helping out on this program. I'd also like to thank the Vigo County Library and also you, Rondell, for doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you as well. All right.
Good morning. I want to thank the three of you for being here. I certainly appreciate that. My name is Curtis DeBon. I'm here on behalf of the Vigo County Teachers Association. I just have a quick question for each of you this morning. I was just curious what your thoughts were on the governor's proposed increase to education funding. What do you think about that? And maybe what do you think we can expect this year when it comes to education?
Well, I think, it's great what the governor's proposed. I certainly support it. I think, another initiative of his is to get textbooks paid for, and I'm also a big supporter of that. I think it's a budget session, so it'll probably come down to the last things in the budget, how much we can put into education. But I know in the Senate chambers, there is an emphasis on putting more money into education. Textbook issue may be a little bit more of a struggle.
I know it's shocking, but I support it. So I think it's a really good proposal, but I've learned in 4 years that, at the beginning, you get all excited, and at the end, it's quite a different story. So I'm sure we'll be looking at all the numbers and trying to figure out. But as you well know, and most people know, there's a huge teacher shortage, still a crisis. And when I talk about teachers, I'm talking about cafeteria workers, bus drivers, the whole gamut. It takes a village. So I'm in support of his proposal, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I would also concur with what my colleagues have mentioned over here as well. The biggest, thing we'll have to see is as we go through it, just to look at the numbers, and also, again, I'm always very cognizant of protecting the taxpayers along the way. I'm assuming, and I've gone through a bit of his budget, but I haven't looked at the tax figures to see, as far as, are the numbers sustainable? And so I'm certainly, something I would be in support of, but I also want to make sure that it's something that the taxpayers can sustain as well.
I want to thank the three of you once again, and I will remain cautiously optimistic.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Bob Murray, Executive Director of the Taxpayer Association. Some of your colleagues have proposed the eventual eliminating of the state income tax. What's your opinion of that, and how in the world would you make up a major source of revenue?
Well, on the Senate side, one of the priorities of our caucus is to form a committee, a summer study committee, or maybe a task force that goes on for a few years, but to review just that. A lot of folks do want to get rid of the income tax, but it's a very important question. How are we going to fund the state of Indiana without income tax? So our goal is to form a committee and study the issue there.
It has to come from somewhere, so I'll be interested to see what the study says, because if we do that, I don't want cities, counties, and school corporations that receive that money for the state to say, okay, you're on your own, which over, the proposals in the past, like eliminating BPP, it hurts local entities, and that's what I don't want to happen, so.
Actually, I would support eliminating the state's income tax. If you look at what our founding fathers had in the Constitution, basically each state and the federal government for that matter, was to operate on consumption taxes only. That was the only tax. One of the so I'm very concerned about the income tax. The idea behind that was that an individual would not be taxed on their individual labors. The bottom line was that, again, government would be sustained by consumption taxes, and then that can be done. One of the reasons we've had such radical government growth and so much spending is because of basically being able to get into people's pockets. And then one of the other areas that, even though we've got the constitutional amendment with the property tax caps, as we see is with the value of properties having recently climbed up, although that does appear that that's kind of going back down as the interest rates rise. But I also have a concern about people being able to keep their homes, their farms, and their businesses with increases in assessments on their properties. Again, even with the property tax caps, even if a percentage remains the same, if the value of the assessed value goes up, it can still make it an unaffordable situation for a property owner.
All right, thank you very much. And were there any more sponsor questions? Okay, if not, we're going to open it up for the public to come in line, and Carolyn, you can come on and go first and be a member of the public this time.
Yes.
But again, we're asking that you take 1 minute to ask your
Right.
question and a minute and a half to respond. And yeah, there you go.
Okay. At the start of Governor Holcomb's address, he said that he is focused on 3 main goals: securing Indiana's place in the economy of the future, transforming the delivery of public health across the state, and making unprecedented investments in the classroom from pre-K through college and adult learning. Which of these goals do you feel is the most important to achieve, and what do you think needs to be done to achieve that goal?
Well, that's a good question. I guess for me, this session, I think it's the education part, the K through 12, higher ed, and adult education. Especially as we've been looking at adult education, here in Vigo County, 12% of our population doesn't have a high school diploma. How, we need to improve that so we can get these people into the workforce. So I think, the governor's initiative on adult education, I'm looking forward to helping him with that.
I'm going to say it's a toss-up between public health and education. Economic impact is hugely important, and I think his initiatives are covering that. But as far as public health, we talk about a teacher crisis. We have a huge problem with healthcare right now, and again, finding nurses and doctors that want to stay in Indiana. That is a huge issue, and as we all age and get older, it's a little scary. So we really need to kind of double our efforts down on making healthcare a bit cheaper in this state. And then, of course, education. We really need to just keep saying we want to attract people, we want to keep people in Indiana, and so much of that is providing the best education we can for our youth and our adults.
One of the things that I'm interested in and seeing is, as Representative Goodrich's bill, House Bill 1002, kind of also known as Reinventing High School. On the education side of things, one of the biggest concerns that I see, and even in talking with high school students, is that there's kind of a disconnect between what they feel that they're learning from their education and being able to go into the marketplace. And so what we're looking at doing is giving scholarship accounts to students to where some of these classes they take will also prepare them, either for higher education or to go into the marketplace, or into the workplace. But one of the biggest concerns that I really do see is a lack of skilled labor out there. That's, I think that the idea that just because somebody goes and gets a 4-year college degree doesn't necessarily mean that they leave with skills that plug them into the workplace. There are certain areas that do that, I will admit that, but Representative Goodrich is right down the hall from me, and I want to really dive into his bill to see exactly what we're looking at doing in secondary education or high school, basically to better prepare students for either entering college or the workplace, and making sure their education is giving them skills that can be applied to real life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thanks for your attendance today. My name is Sarah Dillon. I'm the coordinator of the Vigo County Green Party, and I'm also representing a group called Better Ballot Indiana. This is in regards to, indirectly, it's in regards to Senate Bill 216, or what I would like to call how to piss off every single political party and independent that may be running for office. My question is, how would you help to reform elections, i.e. improving ballot access laws, and of course, implementing ranked choice voting in Indiana?
Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, first of all, if you don't mind, remind me on the ranked choice voting. I don't remember. I know we've talked about it, but I don't remember what that is.
Ranked choice voting is a different type of voting system. Instead of voting for one option, you're ranking your preferences. I think I mentioned this last year.
I'm still not quite sure I follow you, but I guess I'll digress and go back to what I had shared earlier. I mean, I still believe that we've never had it easier to vote than we do today. I mean, you can vote very early ahead of the election. You can go to the courthouse. It's just, in fact, actually you can go to another city within your county ahead of the election on, even on weekends and so forth. I just think that again, all of this talk about the sky falling is, I just don't agree with it. I don't believe that to be the case at all, and I think that it's very easy to vote today and easier than it ever has been in the past.
I think this is the bill on, that Senator Buck filed about
Yes.
moving the deadline from June to March for independent candidates and for a party to fill a vacancy. Is that yeah. To be honest, I've just read the description the other day. I haven't really looked into the bill, but, and I don't know why he wants to do that, but I think, I really can't speak to it too much, but at this point.
I have to read the bill.
Thank you very much.
My name is Jordan Trachtenberg. As maybe many of you know, in this community last year, we had a non-binary student at West Vigo Middle School who committed suicide because of transphobia and bullying in our schools and our community. And I would like to know, would you rise in support of, or would you decline to support a bill that stripped medical autonomy away from trans youth and their parents?
I actually authored a bill, and I don't believe mine is probably the one that's going to get the hearing, although a number of others did as well, that does prohibit surgeries and hormone treatments and so forth on basically minors from being treated for, or for basically giving hormones and things with the idea of transitioning from one sex to the other. And I think that's incredibly harmful to them when you look at the statistics. I mean, you and I can have a conversation about that later, but the bottom line is that I feel like by allowing a minor to basically try to transition, and I attended a meeting the other night where we had some individuals who had spoken on that issue. I think that's actually very, very harmful to them, and if it were my choice, I would put a stop to that.
Okay. I'm I'm exactly opposite of Bruce, but I'm confused on the question. Could you reword it in just an easier way for me? I apologize.
Yeah, I'm asking if there was a bill that stripped medical autonomy away from trans children and their parents, would you support that?
I'd be
or-
against it.
Okay.
Okay,
you'd
I
be
was just
against
making sure
it.
that I
And
understood.
I would support that bill, obviously, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to read it, but I mean, I guess I don't know at this point.
All right, thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Aaron Muchler. I'm also asking a question about trans rights. My question is actually specifically for Bruce then. So when the American Medical Association and American Psychological Association both have overwhelmingly stated that transitioning for trans youth in many, many, many cases is the right decision for them and actually increases their health and lowers suicide rates, why would you oppose that? Is there any reason besides ideological reasons?
Actually, in many, many cases, the exact opposite is true as well. And I do feel that there's definitely a financial incentive for the medical industry to promote this, and I think it's incredibly harmful to children to basically try to transition them. And you know, again, once they're of the age of majority, that's a different ballgame. But as a child, I would completely disagree with that. And just because somebody says that, you know, because they're able to, because they point out and say, okay, this stops suicide attempts and so forth, well, just the opposite is true in many cases as well.
That's not correct, but thank you.
Good morning. My name is Ted Zendona. I'm from West Terre Haute. I wanted to address something I've been talking about for 3 years to Tanya Plouffe and Senator Ford. And
We
I
can
didn't say so
barely
much.
hear you. Sorry if you want to pull up my.
Is it not working? Oh,
Let's see,
sorry.
yeah, if you could speak directly into the mic, there you go.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, anyway, the one thing I wanted to bring up, which I've been talking to my representatives constantly for about 3 years, ever since they kicked off the out-of-state Southeast Tran in Georgia program to do medical transportation. It's totally failed now. Vigo County don't have nobody. I got a new health driver back in the middle of November that was the owner of the business, and he literally got us almost killed. I mean, because they violate the law. That's the only one left. And Senator Ford last year at the same Crackerbarrel said that he hoped to find more providers. There just is none. And so Vigo County's just been left stripped of any kind of medical transportation. They need to go to Indy or outside of town. I do have some beads transportation. It's kept me good for local, but that is my question. How are we going to get to medical appointments? I got one endocrinologist that's out there, you know, in Indy. So, and that's the only way I can. There's nobody else.
Yeah. So this is something I've been, from you talking about it, spending a lot of time on it. TransCare, or Southeast Trans, who we, the state contracted with, that contract is now going back out for bid. But
Yes.
a lot of this started when we decided to have a middleman arrange the transportation. You know,
Yeah.
everybody goes to one source. So I'm hoping with the RFP that they'll find a better provider.
I hope
But
so.
it is an issue, and I think there's another group here in Vigo County, the MPO, I believe, met this week, and it formed a regional group to talk about how we can improve medical transportation here. We all know it's a problem in this community and in this region, so I think they'll work on it. But Ted, I do have to say one thing. My LA Maddie left me, but she told me to tell you that she'll miss you.
Oh, that's very kind of her. I'm glad to be missed by somebody. Well, anyway, for 20 years, it worked perfectly fine. We had no problem with it. It worked great. And there was plenty of providers from Sullivan, Indiana, Clay County, Terre Haute, you know, but they've just all disappeared. They don't want to drive for that company, and that's the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm still Curtis DeBon. I'm going to take off my teacher hat for this question and put on another hat that many teachers also have. That is the second job hat. Truly, though, I am blessed. I have 2 jobs, 2 careers that I love greatly. Not a lot of people can say that. I also work as a realtor, and that is what my next question has to do with. Our community has a low inventory of housing. Much of the inventory we have is aged, is older. I am wondering what is being done at state level to maybe address this. And I know, Senator Ford, we have discussed this a little bit, and I do appreciate that.
Yeah, a few years ago, we passed residential TIFs. I think this year that's being looked at again to see if we can improve the residential TIF. We're kind of in a perfect storm on housing where, you know, input costs have gone up substantially. We don't, you know, to Bruce's point earlier, we don't have the workforce to frame homes like we used to. Not many home builders left that want to do spec homes. You know, they'll do custom homes, but many don't want to do spec homes. So we're looking at it, you know, through the TIF. Can we improve the TIF to encourage more housing? The READY grant process that we went through last budget cycle, where we put $500 million in the quality of life, a lot of that money is going into housing. And I think, you know, the governor is proposing another $500 million for READY Round 2. And I think specifically in there is language about it going to cover housing infrastructure costs. But it is a problem that, you know, we're facing all over Indiana, but I think especially here. You know, I haven't looked in a couple of weeks, but a few weeks back, there were less than 100 homes available in Vigo County.
So, same thing, just to piggyback, it is the perfect storm because you want people to come to your community and then there's no housing. So there's lots of conversation in the State House on how to fix that. And I just want to remind you, I think you have a third job, don't you?
I do.
Okay.
You know, something that John had mentioned, basically, what I would probably argue, and maybe argue is not the right word, but along that subject matter, there are a lot of older homes that could be fixed up, which is something that was done in the past. So they may not be on the market and available to be purchased, you know, at least that they're, as in being ready to be moved into. But there is a huge shortage of skilled labor that's able to go in and revamp them. And if you are able to get them, a lot of times it's, I mean, I've talked to contractors who are, it's a year wait. And a lot of them don't want to bother revamping or remodeling older houses or restoring them anymore. They say it's so much easier just to do new construction. So I'm not quite sure. I think probably the biggest problem that we've got right now, even though I understand the rising interest rates to try to curb inflation, that's also going to make it very hard for young couples to be able to maybe afford the house payments if they do decide to rehab a home. And a lot of times it's very, very difficult to get a bank loan for a rehab. And so I would say that the biggest problem right now is being able to get low interest loans where rehabbing can be done. At least that's part of the solution. But probably that's probably a multifaceted problem, but that would at least help somewhat.
Thank all of you.
Thank you.
So hi, I'm Sister Barbara Batista. I'm also a healthcare provider. First of all, Mr. Borders, I wanted to apologize for the impact of that snicker. It had nothing to do with your grandson. I'm terribly sorry that it came across that way.
Thank you.
I wanted to say, and this is healthcare related, this is a quote from the CDC, that vaccines do not cause autism. The National Institute of Health, the National Academy of Medicine clearly has stated that. There's been an untold number of studies. A CDC recent study in 2013 added to that research. Vaccines do not cause autism. Another reason why I wanted to come up here is because I really am convinced that we have an opportunity with House Bill 1071 to spend some of our precious dollars in Indiana on a different healthcare-related approach, rather than investigating something that's been proven over and over again that has no association. House Bill 1071, authored by Representative Robin Shackelford, will require implicit bias training for healthcare professionals, and I'd like to know how each of you feel about requiring implicit bias training so as to lessen the adverse health outcomes for minority populations. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. I'm all for it. I believe everybody should have implicit bias training. It's just, to me, it's a no-brainer, and we've talked about it the last couple of years, and I know that the Black Caucus has really been advocating for this, and I completely agree with it.
I've not read the bill, but in general, I'm supportive of training like that for folks.
If you don't mind, I'll go to the vaccine side of it. It was brought up that, again, I've seen a lot of studies that are just the opposite of that. Quite frankly, many of the things that are spouted by the Center for Disease Control, just because they say it doesn't mean that it's true. And quite frankly, again, I can tell you, as a matter of fact, with my grandson's case, there was no question that he was a changed child after the vaccine. There was no question about that. And I've had many, I would say hundreds of mothers in particular who have reached out to me as a result of that piece of legislation being filed, who've said, listen, we completely agree with you. Here's what happened with our child. And so, check out the movie Vaxxed, and you can look at some of the studies. I know you probably have your opinion of that movie, but quite frankly, there are those that would adamantly disagree with you, and they would adamantly disagree with the statements made by the CDC.
So that's called association, not causation. But I really would like you, if you're willing, to say about the implicit bias training. The bill I mentioned.
I will.
The bill.
Okay, hold on 1 second. So this is not a debate. This is not a back and forth. Yeah. He will answer the question that he would like to answer. Would you like to answer the question?
That's fine on the implicit bias training. I haven't read the bill, but in general, I'm dubious about bills like that, quite frankly.
Thank you for your response.
All right, thank you very much. Any sort of conversation that we would like to have, we can have that after the public question and answer session is over. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Nancy Edwards, a retired teacher, and my question has to do about tax incentives, about trying to save energy. I'm wondering if there's any bills coming down the pike that would maybe give us tax incentives to make our homes more fuel efficient, like replacing leaky windows or furnaces that are not as efficient as old ones. But the big thing I have to bring up is I pay extra money to register my hybrid car when I license it every year. And those that have all electric cars pay even more money than I do, extra taxes to register it. That seems to be rather counterintuitive if we're trying to move towards electric vehicles. And I'm wondering if anything's being done to change that.
I can't, off the top of my head, I've not seen a bill that would put incentives to save energy here at the state level.
Don't you think it'd be a good idea?
Sure, yeah.
So let's try it.
Yeah.
We'd be stepping in line finally with a lot of other states that are already doing this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. In terms of taxes on hybrids and energy vehicles, I think, quite frankly, you're going to see us go the opposite way and tax them more, because the reality is we fund our road funding off of gasoline tax. So if we're not going to consume as much gasoline, we're going to have to make that money up somewhere, because quite frankly, that affects education, mental health, affects everything. Because if we're going to continue to fix our roads, we're going to have to pull the money from someplace.
But it helps the environment, and that needs to be thought about too.
All right, folks. I just want to reiterate, I'm so sorry to be this person, but the structure of this forum is that you ask a question, they answer the question. Not you ask a question, they answer a question. You ask one back and forth, back and forth. So let's please, as best we can, so that we can get through this, have each person answer. Thank you, Senator Ford, for answering.
You're just
Representative Paff.
as you were last year.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm the bad guy here, but would any other legislator like to answer this question before we move on?
Sure, I'll take a crack.
Thank you.
So one of my bills that I sponsored is creating a climate task force and actually studying energy savings and what's going on with our climate. So yes, I would be supportive of the first part. And the second part, it's kind of like John said, it comes down to money. I'm not really sure where I am on that, only because I don't know enough to talk about it.
Actually, as far as the, what you mentioned about making our homes more efficient and getting a tax credit for that, I like that idea a lot. I'll also share with you, though, again, the biggest problem that we as a society are going to run into is if, you know, for example, we had a rental property that we had rehabbed, and the waiting limit just to get the door, or to get new windows was like, I think 4 or 5 months, whereas used to it was like a 30-day wait, and just the supply chain issues are horrible. I mean, they're still horrible. And so, again, I think it's due to a worker shortage. And again, a lot of the materials that are necessary for making a home more efficient, they can be gotten, but they've really jumped up in price, and there's an incredibly long waiting line to get, or a waiting period of time to be able to get those materials as well.
If I could just say one thing, so I also signed on to the environmental task force bill on the Senate side that Senator Yoder has.
You did?
So yeah,
That's good
I did for the
news.
second year, I think, for the second year. But you know, I mean, honestly, if we had my way, hydrogen would play a role in this. I mean, it's going to be a balance of how do we continue to fund roads, protect the environment, you know, move to more energy efficient vehicles. And I think, you know, especially when you drive I-70 and you have all those trucks, hydrogen can fill that gap, and then hydrogen, you can still tax it at the pump like we do with fuel. So I wanted to make sure, you know, I'm not against these things. There's just that reality of striking the balance.
Thank you very much. Before you ask your question, sir, would you like to ask a question first? I know that you've asked a question already, and before we get to repeats, we want to get everybody in at least one round first. Okay, all right. Just want to give you the chance.
Jordan Trachtenberg again. 2 bills to discuss, House Bill 1220 and Senate Bill 342. The first allows parents to sue medical professionals for even the perception they are giving a child gender-affirming care.
Was that Senate bill? What was that? I'm sorry.
House Bill 1220. Senate Bill 342 is teacher hiring, and that's enforcement of preventing teachers from being rehired after the material to harmful to minors offense. So you brought up education and healthcare as being key issues for Indiana. How do we continue to attract healthcare and educational professionals to this county and state if they're constantly under threat of a lawsuit?
In all honesty, I haven't read those bills, and it's not an excuse, but the bottom line is without knowing, again, the lawsuit, I mean, I have to read that. I mean, I think what I'm understanding he's saying is that if a teacher teaches something that a parent finds objectionable, they can file a lawsuit against that teacher, I think. Is that what you're saying?
I believe that's the case, yes.
All right, I mean, I'll have to look into that and talk to the author to see exactly what's going on there. I'm just not sure. Haven't read those bills. It's just early in the ballgame, sorry.
And I'll say, you know, in this past year, we've had the transgender athlete bill that I was against, and then also the abortion legislation this summer. And with both of those topics, it's making it more difficult to keep and attract new people to come into our state. So I think in the bigger picture, when you look at the bills, we need to do what we can for the majority, you know, of all Hoosiers and stop targeting specific groups.
I've not read either of the bills, so I really can't say anything to them at this point.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to start any trouble at everything, so I'll just read a opening statement. It's got 2 parts to it and everything. Then if you prefer me to go back into line, I'll go back into line.
No, I just can't hear you
don't
very
have
well.
my glasses. So.
We just want to be able to hear you, that's all.
Thank you.
First of all,
There you go.
I want to thank the panel for attending this session, and I pray for their forgiveness as I run slightly over the allotted time, but I assure the panel that this is not a filibuster.
You need to
Only-
ask the woman in the front row in the pink, you need to ask her for forgiveness. She's the main one. There you go.
Possibly 1 extra minute, possibly 2 at the most. My main objective
No more
here.
than one. No more than one, but go ahead.
Okay. My main objective here is to understand if our elected officials here are truly concerned with the concerns of the people to the extent of enforcing one's rights. To my understanding, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that the duties of the representative are clear: listen to our concerns of the public, reduce challenges through legislative action, and find resources to support district success. Trying not to put each of you on the spot, but is this a correct assumption? All right. She says stop, sir.
All right, what was your question that you were trying to ask, sir? Go ahead.
Is the panel here to listen to the concerns of the public, reduce challenges through legislative action, and find resources to support district success?
Yes.
I believe that's the idea, but from what I've noticed is a lot of times when people come into this position, they shift from that into their own sort of projects, you know, which it depends on if you like their projects or not. But I think absolutely that is supposed to be our mission.
Well, and the bottom line is, it's like, I would say in an average day, and this is not an exaggeration, I get about 50 phone calls a day, not just on legislative issues, but a lot of those are on legislative issues. And so, or if I go to the grocery store or wherever, I mean, I'm always being lobbied on something by somebody that I'm maybe standing in line with or whatever. And, you know, I would say that, yeah, I think all of us, you know, listen to our constituents, whether they always agree with us or we always agree with them. That's a different matter. I mean, you know, people have different opinions, and but the bottom line is that we all get lobbied at church, at school. You know, I'm sure you do it at school, in the grocery store, wherever, and we all want success for the districts that we represent. But again, you know, there are differing opinions as to what will bring about that success to it.
Library, real quick, and it seems as though he's well-researched in his question. May I have permission to allow him to ask his entire question? All right, go for it, sir.
It's, okay. I was going to ask, secondly, can I request that a representative read this document, as my site is not, it used to be, and under the disclaimer that not all statements of said document reflect personal opinions of this board in part or in whole. If you just don't want to read it, I'll go through it.
Whatever you want.
If you can help me read
What's
it.
it about?
Would you like me to help you read what the question is? I have no problem doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that's my job.
No, but if he has copies, why don't we just read it later? Yeah, we could read it later if you've got it printouts there.
I think they
Okay.
are. These all for us?
Thank you, Rondrell.
Thank you, Rondrell.
I will read. Here's what we'll do. Thank you. This is Crackerbarrel session on the fly. I will read a portion of it. They have copies there that they can read, but I just want to give you the general gist of it, and so bear with me because we have a little bit of time, and I want to make sure and we get to all the questions. But
Thank you, sir.
I'll just start. No problem at all. It says the Constitution and laws are there more to protect the public and its citizens more than an occupation or government. Example, there's a castle law that protects citizens and their property from those committing unlawful acts or police not acting under the color of the law, thus giving way to citizens having the rights to employment of life and enjoying the fruits of their labor. We the people are always hearing statements pertaining to drug addicts and homeless people from a variety of sources that include the public, the news, officials, police, etc. To resolve these issues or offer solutions for alternative lifestyle, federal and state laws overrule company policies. Laws created with an intent to maintain social order and peace in society and provide protection to all of its citizens. Ethics are made to help promote, to decide what is right or wrong and how to act. The law has a legal binding. Laws are structured rules utilized to govern all of society. To summarize, the law takes precedence over ethics, rules, policies, and requirements held by a company or facility. Therefore, no policy is credible if it violates the law or constitution. With that said, I'd like to return to the discussion of addiction and the rights of people to receive a medical treatment without denial, discrimination, and/or prejudices. One of the solutions of the government has implemented is to reduce crime and enhancing public safety, reduce the severity of the addiction, allow the addict to establish or restore and maintain an acceptable level of medical and social functioning, mental health, the medical problems including HIV-related illnesses, sexually transmitted diseases, multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis, violence-related injuries and malnutrition, costly emergency healthcare resources, and etc. When successfully treated with methadone, when successfully treated with methadone, such individuals experience improved general health associated with reduction in both drug use and high-risk behaviors. On-site or easily accessible primary health care offers a solution, front and back, to the problem. All right, so I'm going to go to the closing argument, which is on the back. It says, in closing, I thank the board for this opportunity to express these concerns that pertain to life-altering treatments and extremely important benefits toward the public's health and safety. These concerns are not to be regarded as frivolous unless members of our local government considers their districts just a paycheck, and it continues from there. Thank you so much for the background. If there is one way, because I do not want to speak for you, if there is one concise question that you would like to ask in terms of the healthcare and the addiction treatment from this statement, what would it be?
Would the panel be willing to give me 5 minutes of their time after this meeting?
I think your question is about method. That seems like methadone seemed to be a common thread throughout the 3 pages as I was reading it.
Yes, the government has approved, the FDA has approved methadone for a treatment to cure opiate. We have a major problem with drug addiction, homelessness.
And so what are you wanting to see as regards methadone?
I think you can use methadone here. Didn't we pass
Yeah,
that
I
a
mean,
while ago?
but that seemed to be your primary thread throughout this.
I don't use methadone, but I'm a attorney in fact for Jennifer Thomas, and she's being denied treatment, and I want to know.
She is not allowed to use methadone?
She was discharged from the facility for using a prescription drug, Tylenol 3, I believe it was. She did not know it was an opiate. She got a dirty urine screen, and she was discharged. They would not litigate the situation. There is no other programs in Vigo County that does the methadone clinic. It's strictly under the WIN program affiliated through the Hamilton Center. So once you're out, you cross this doctor doesn't like the way you look, you are done. There is no other resources or anything for patients that this doctor decides to discharge. They're not a secondary methadone clinic. There's not a board that governs over one certain doctor if he plays God. There's just no other resources and everything, and I believe that puts somebody in too high of a position to monopolize over one program. We should have, if you go to a doctor and you don't like what he says, you should be able to go get a second opinion.
Right.
If you want to get surgery to remove a gallbladder or something, you should have the medical right to medical treatment.
Right.
These are my concerns, and I will not take up the board's time. I believe there's a couple more questions. I just, if at all possible, if you could spare 5 minutes after the meeting, I would appreciate to go into this. I promise I will not keep you all night and everything. I promise I'll be as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Thank you, sir, personally, for the time and effort you put into that question. We
Thank
appreciate
you, Ron
taking time.
Drell, for your assistance and everything, and thanks
problem.
the panel for putting up with me.
No problem at all. Thank you, sir.
Hi, it's Aaron Muchler again. I have another question for Representative Borders. So you've sponsored several legislations relating to banning transgender care in some capacity,
Yes.
or things that would better transgender lives. So my question to you is, since you would seem to probably be an expert on this, can you please tell me what the guidelines for receiving hormone replacement therapy or transgender surgeries currently are?
Well, basically, as I shared with you earlier, my goal would be to stop minors from receiving hormone therapy at all.
So then can you
And-
please
and
tell
as
me the
far as-
guidelines for currently, what hoops do minors have to go through in order to receive hormone therapy?
I don't know, because my goal is to stop it, period, to put it and stop it in its tracks.
I would say then you haven't done the research. Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I would say then you haven't done enough research. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, Marcia Miller. This kind of goes back to one of Curtis DeBon's questions. I am a homeowner in the Farrington Grove area. I just paid off my mortgage. Everybody does that. So I have a home. Many rentals on my block alone are not kept up. I've always been told out-of-state landlords are a big problem with this, because who do you talk to? So if I was looking for a home, one of those 100 homes that are currently available, and I drove down my street and I saw more than one, more than often the house around that home are going to look like crap. So my question to the state legislators is this a state legislative issue? We can't be the only town, only community. Or is this more of a local county municipal issue where we make out-of-state landlords more accountable for what they're doing to the homes in our state?
Well, so long before I was a legislator, under Mayor Kevin Burke, me and a few people looked into creating a kind of a permit system similar to what Bloomington, Lafayette, Indianapolis, many communities have, because we really don't know how many rentals we have here, who owns them, how many occupants are in them. So this has been a problem for decades. Personally, I think it's a local issue. I mean, we could solve it at the state level, but I think communities are different, and communities should be able to decide some of this stuff. Not to call Curtis out, but, I'd throw it back to Curtis and the city council that, if rentals are a problem, that, it's a city council issue that they could resolve. And, a permitting process, we researched it, visited places, and the city council back in 2005 wouldn't even discuss it.
I'm happy to discuss it. I'll stay.
Yeah. I knew you would.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
My name's Kevin Southwood, and I'm here to talk about queues. I've used queues.
About what, I'm sorry?
Queues. Can you hear me?
No.
What
A queue.
cues?
A queue would be like, like when people take a picture of a car and they would put it on the refrigerator or on their mirror. They have it on there for a year, and they end up buying that car because that picture is worth. A picture's worth 1,000 words. A queue provokes them to do something. A picture of a car would provoke them to get that car. That's what a queue is.
Or if you're heavy set, you put a picture of somebody fit a magnet on your refrigerator to remind you to not eat as much or whatever.
Okay, but
I mean, no, but I don't mean that facetiously, but basically something that gives you an incentive in your mind to take a certain action.
that's all it is.
Okay,
It's as simple as that. But see how no one's able to really figure it out. I've been working on it for 15 months, and I've had to realize a lot of problems. I've had to use pilot programs. I've had to go forward by looking in the rearview mirror all the problems I've had. Well, my idea is I'm using a clothespin in my car. I'm a rather aggressive driver for 45 years, and I'm curbing that. You know,
I'm
hey,
sorry, when you said you're a rather aggressive driver for 45 years and you're curbing it, it's just been a slow process, right?
well,
Sorry.
you know, whenever you have no ability to help yourself and you have to find all this stuff on your own, a teacher, a legislature, you know, the mayor, nobody helps you. You have to figure it all on yourself. You have to do all the research. You have to do all the testing. I've had to test in order to get this to work. So I know it works, and I'm going forward. I give myself a positive all the time, and that's how I'm moving forward. But the clothespin on a car, I put it on my dash. When I get into the car, I have to be aware that, hey, drive better, drive safer, and be a better driver. So it cues me into being awareness. I've lessened my driving. I've improved my driving. I've been doing it for 2.5 months, but it takes time to work through that stuff. But, you know, if people could do that in Terre Haute, go across Indiana, across the world to curb road rage.
Yes.
You know, if you could control your road rage, you could have less run-ins with the law. I could eliminate the judicial system, the police, and the jail with a clothespin on a dash. I could eliminate the entire structure of a justice
go ahead
system.
and thank you for your passion, and thank you so much for what you're talking about. Hopefully we can have more of a conversation a little bit later, but thank you so much for your comments, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now I'm really nervous.
All right.
I have a question.
You may want to bring your mic down just a little bit, sorry.
And go ahead and say your name and ask your question,
like
please.
everybody else.
You're fine.
Is this better?
That's perfect.
I don't want to be screaming. My question, I have two, but I'll be brief, if I'm allowed. Let's do the first one. It relates to the earlier conversation regarding majorities and opinions and expressions of the populace whom you serve. My concern is that it seemed like the legislature sort of unilaterally early this year did away with 50 years of established reproductive rights for approximately 53% of the population. My question is, I know you guys have a concern about what the voters think and what the citizens think. Will you not consider a referendum of active Indiana voters as, you know, because right now things are very confusing. They're tied up legally. Healthcare providers don't know which way to turn. I would like to see a referendum regarding the reproductive rights issue that we are so bogged down in right now. Mr. Borders, would you want to answer that first?
I had the opportunity to vote to save the lives of unborn children, and I exercised my vote as a legislator to do that. And the bottom line is, those children are created in the image of God just as much as every one of us in this room, and they deserve a right to life and an opportunity to live. And I voted to help protect their lives.
Might I intervene on that just to make a comment? And nobody is disputing that for you personally, if that's your mandate?
I'm so sorry again.
Okay.
These sound like wonderful conversations that need to happen after 11:30. They really do. One-on-one with Mr. Borders, if you would like to have that conversation.
I know he is.
The library, they'll get rid of me if I don't say anything about it, so I have to say this. I'm so
Can I throw in my
sorry.
next question then?
Yes, go ahead and say your next question, unless there's somebody else who wants to answer that.
And it's even briefer. We all know that health outcomes in Indiana are approximately equivalent with southern states of Mississippi and Alabama in terms of smoking, obesity, the health disparities, particularly the disproportionate rate of minority maternal morbidity. What plans do we have after years and years, decades of throwing money into the existing public health department with no noticeable improvement?
I think the governor's proposing, a lot of changes in the public health system. I'm still reserving judgment to see to really understand the whole package. It's pretty substantial, a lot of money, a lot of processes changed. I need to talk to the local county health department as well, and I haven't done that yet. But he is attempting to do something.
And I know he just did a report on public health, and it's available, and a lot of his recommendations are being discussed at the State House.
Okay.
Well, one of the things that I would like to see is, I don't, you know, this is something I think we all need to take a look at, is the fact that one state, you know, so to speak, is, if one state is healthier than another, is it actually because of a law that's taking place in that state? Because basically, you know, we're legislators. What we do is we write law. And so is there a law out there that's that's the magic pill that causes people to be healthier in one state or the other, or does it happen to be maybe because of climate, or you know, I mean, seriously, if they're in a warmer state where they're not, you know, bundled up in the wintertime like we have to do here in Indiana, I mean, I think we need to take a look at it. And there's always this assumption that somehow if we just had the right law, that's going to make a difference. Again, that's what we do, is we write law. Or are there other factors that are involved in that? And I think we need to take a look at that and see why some states are healthier than others. And is it legislation, or are there other reasons that could be a part of that as well?
Thank you very much. Yes.
I know her first question, we kind of got sidetracked into the back and forth dialogue, but I think the original question was simply not what you think about abortion, but would you be willing to support putting that question out to the voters? Is that correct? Would you support
A referendum so that everybody
So,
can
could we get
weigh in,
answers to that
not
question?
just legislators.
Legislators, would you like to answer that question?
Yes.
No, I'm not a fan of referendums, and currently in Indiana, we have very narrow scope on the referendums we allow. So for me, just in general, it's more about the referendums. I don't want to be like California and have 48 propositions every election.
No.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Deb Herndon. I'm a teacher in Vigo County and a member of the Vigo County Teachers Association, the union. I'd like to go full circle back to Representative Pfaff's desire to talk about the budget. In the governor's state of the state, I was very heartened, as were a lot of teachers, in him wanting to increase school funding. There was also a lot of talk, though, about increasing so-called school choice. And as we all know, school choice takes away from the funding for the public schools that are regulated by the government. Will the school choice question and the increase funding for school choice be a part of the budget discussion, or will that be a separate discussion?
Actually, that would be a question more for Tanya and I at the moment, not excluding you, John, but since the budget originates on the House side.
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, in all honesty, I don't know. I'll have to dig into that, and I'll get a hold of, excuse me, Jeff Thompson, the chairman of Ways and Means, and we'll find out. I mean, it's, again, not to make an excuse, but since we just finished up our first week of session, things kind of move slow, and now they'll just, you know, they'll surge in activity, but this first week is a little tough to jump on top of some of those.
And I will say it's always part of the discussion, but it gets very cloudy because there's a lot of different words: innovation schools, vouchers, public charter, private charter, public ed. And so in my mind, it gets very confusing and very quickly. So it is always part of the conversation and will continue. I don't know how it's going to play out, though.
All right.
And we'll see what the House sends us, and we'll fix it on the Senate side.
Thank you very much.
He's just as humble as always. You know?
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Jim Hurd. I live east of Duggar in Representative Borders District. In 2015, the legislature passed a deduction for the civil service retirement system of $16,000, and it wasn't indexed for inflation. And Representative Ed Clare from District 72 in the far southern part of Indiana has introduced a bill, H 1159, which will increase that tax deduction to deal with inflation over the last 7 years. And my question is, I might like to ask you to read H 1159 and ask the Ways and Means Committee to bring it to the floor for a vote. Okay.
Okay.
And that was Ed Clear was the author of that?
Yes.
Okay.
1159?
1150, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hi, Connie Miller, live here in Vigo County. I just want to, you had talked about reducing Indiana income tax. I don't know if you're familiar, you might want to do a case study of Kansas when Governor Brownback was governor. They reduced the taxes there, and it was detrimental to the whole state and to lots of public funding. And also, I wanted to ask Bruce Border, are you planning on using public funds to do your study for vaccines and autism? Because
Yeah.
there's, why? There's already been decades of studies, so why should our public funds be used for another study for studying vaccines and autism? And also, I worked with children with autism. It was very challenging, but it was also very rewarding. And also, I want to know if you would consider outlawing conversion therapy in Indiana. Canada has already done that. And also, why are Indiana residents held hostage by the Indiana legislature to get a referendum put on our election ballot?
Would you like to answer all or any of those questions?
As far as the study goes, I mean, you know, okay, I would propose that basically any study that we do as a state, the state of Indiana, probably somebody has done a study somewhere else, maybe regarding that same issue, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take a look at it as well. I mean, again, you know, if many studies are, they basically, you know, they're looking for a certain result at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, and so again, you know, from what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing from many mothers, many health providers, you know, the autism is vaccines actually have resulted in a lot of children, and particularly young boys, moving on to the autism spectrum. And
I'd just like to make one comment. You need
I'm sorry.
You need to
I'm
check
so sorry.
sources.
I
You
get
have
it.
to check your sources
I get
when
it.
you get your
I
study.
do check my sources.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can I answer the
Yes, you
referendum
may.
question?
Absolutely.
So on the referendums, currently, it's not in the state constitution to do that. So it's you know, so it would take a state constitution to do a referendum.
How do we get the amendment done? Does that have to go through the state legislatures too?
Yeah, 2 cycles, a vote, and I think the last one we did was property tax games?
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
All right. Oh,
I think we're past time for questions already, so
public question and answer ends at 11:30, so
I think we need time to wrap up and then the conversations.
I have on my program that it ends at 11:30 and that at 11:40 we have the closing comments, but sorry about that, just checking to make sure. My bad. So let's go ahead and have closing statements from our legislators, and we will take 2 minutes, and we will start with Representative Borders.
First of all, I do appreciate all of you coming out. I know a lot of people don't come to public events, and this is truly where we hear what is on your mind, unless it happens to be, you know, just bumping into each other at a restaurant or the store or whatever. But I do appreciate that, and I know a lot of times I tend to be the odd man out. I'm definitely to the right, which is that's okay. I mean, it's but on the same token, I do want you to know that the things that I share, they come absolutely from my heart, and I'm not easily, and just like many of you, you have value systems that have been built up over your entire life. Well, that's the same with me as well, and so I don't mind having those conversations, but just because we don't agree doesn't mean that we can't have those conversations and hear each other out. But the thing that I'll share is that, this being a budget year, my biggest concern is to make sure that the taxpayer is indeed protected, that we don't just give lip service to it, that we are and truly watching out for the taxpayer and allowing people to keep more of what they earn.
Thank you very much. Representative Path?
Yeah, thank you all for coming out this morning. It's been very enlightening. As you can tell, there's a lot of issues going on in the state of Indiana, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this session brings. I will maintain that I think the budget is the #1 priority, and we really need to take a look at our amazing surplus, which you all have donated to. Thank you very much. On that respect, if we really are getting so much money that we have to return it to you, we do need to look at our tax structure and what's going on with that. Or we could just take all that money and put it in education. But thank you so much for coming today.
Well, I don't know how to follow that. Thanks, Tanya.
You're welcome.
No, thanks everyone for coming out. I always enjoy coming to these and hearing from the public. And I think this session is going to be a good session. Last budget, we had a lot of bipartisan support. I think we will have that again this year. Hopefully, the focus on education will continue to move forward, but also on mental health. I was a little surprised we didn't talk about that today, but on the Senate side, we are looking to create mental health crisis centers in communities. You'll hear a lot about that in the next coming months. And mental health is, again, one of those passions of mine that I think we need to focus on. But thank you again, and look forward to the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quick reminder, the next meeting will be Saturday, February the 11th at 10 a.m. right here at the Vigo County Public Library. Thank you so much for coming out today. Thank you for all your comments. Have a wonderful Saturday.